They're gone? I stood in my living room, staring at the empty Victorian display cases where my carefully curated antique collection had been housed for the past decade. My mother shifted uncomfortably, while my sister Emma beamed with self-satisfaction. The foundation needs them more than you do, Catherine, Mom said, attempting to sound reasonable. Emma's charity auction is next week, and these pieces will help so many people. My name is Catherine Mitchell, and at 34, I'd spent 15 years building my antique collection. Each piece had a story, a memory, a connection to the past that I'd researched meticulously. But now, without my knowledge or consent, my family had decided my collection would better serve my sister's latest charitable venture. You could have asked, I said quietly, running my fingers along the empty shelves. Emma laughed, flipping her perfect blonde hair. Oh, please, you would have said no. Besides, Mom and Dad still have keys to your house. They're just trying to help me help others. Don't be selfish, Cat. Selfish. That word had followed me throughout my childhood. Any time I didn't immediately yield to Emma's wishes. When she wanted my room because it had better lighting for her dance practices, I was selfish for hesitating. When she needed my college fund because she'd blown hers on a failed startup, I was selfish for suggesting she take out loans instead. The auction's next Saturday, Mom added brightly. You should come. See how much good your collection will do. The Mitchell Foundation for Creative Arts is going to help so many underprivileged children. I bit back a laugh. Emma's foundation was barely 6 months old, created after she'd grown bored with her yoga studio venture. She'd never shown any interest in art or antiques before. But suddenly my collection was crucial to her cause. Where are they now? I asked, keeping my voice level. In storage at the auction house, Emma replied, scrolling through her phone. Don't worry, they're insured. Though honestly, Kat, it's just old furniture. I never understood why you wasted so much money on that stuff anyway. Just old furniture. The Chippendale secretary desk that had taken me 3 years to restore. The Victorian music box I found at a small estate sale in Maine. Its delicate melody still perfect after 150 years. The set of hand-painted Baroque candlesticks that had once graced a French chateau. You had no right, I said, my voice firmer now. Mom's expression hardened. Catherine Ann Mitchell, don't start. Your sister is doing important work. These pieces were just collecting dust here. Now they'll make a real difference. I walked to my study, aware of them following me. Opening my laptop, I pulled up my insurance files and began documenting everything that was missing. Emma peered over my shoulder. What are you doing? Inventory, I replied calmly. For insurance purposes. You're not going to make a fuss, are you? Mom asked, her tone warning. Your father and I fully support Emma's foundation. The family name is finally going to mean something in the philanthropic world. I turned to face them, years of buried resentment bubbling just beneath my composed surface. The collection was insured for $2.7 million, I said quietly. Emma's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on my desk. What? Each piece was professionally appraised and documented. That old furniture you just took, it's worth more than your foundation's entire operating budget. Mom sank into my office chair, her face pale. But, you never said. You never asked. You never asked about my hobby, never showed any interest in why I spent weekends at auctions or summers studying restoration techniques. You were too busy funding Emma's latest whims. Now wait a minute, Emma started, but I held up my hand. The auction is next Saturday, you said. I smiled, a plan already forming in my mind. Perfect, that gives me just enough time. Time for what? Mom asked wearily. To make a donation of my own. I turned back to my laptop, dismissing them as clearly as they'd dismissed my passion for years. You should go now. I have some calls to make. After they left, I sat in my study, looking at the photographs of my collection. Each piece had been chosen with care, restored with patience, and loved for its history and beauty. Now they were gone, taken by the same family who'd never understood why they mattered to me. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd saved years ago, waiting for the familiar voice to answer. Marcus, it's Catherine Mitchell. Remember that conversation we had about my family's historic estate? Yes, the one my parents still live in. I think it's time we discussed its future preservation. My parents had taken my collection, believing it was just pretty furniture. They had no idea they just triggered a chain of events that would shake our family's foundation, in more ways than one. I smiled as I hung up the phone, remembering the estate's estimated value, $12 million. Emma wasn't the only one who could make charitable donations, and I was about to teach my family a lesson about taking things that didn't belong to them. The week before Emma's auction was a flurry of activity, though not the kind my family expected. While they were busy promoting their charitable event, I was meeting with Marcus Harrison, the director of the National Historic Preservation Society. The Mitchell estate is a perfect candidate for preservation, Marcus said, examining the old photographs I provided. Built in 1892, original architecture largely intact, significant historical value to the region. And you say your parents still live there? Yes, I replied, sipping my coffee. They've never appreciated its historical significance. They've been talking about modernizing it for years. Marcus winced. That would be a tragedy. Properties like this are irreplaceable. I nodded, thinking about my irreplaceable antiques. The estate was left to me by my grandmother, you know. She knew I'd understand its value. I'd just been letting my parents live there. The truth was, Grandma had seen what my parents couldn't, my deep love for history and preservation. She left the estate to me in a private will amendment that my parents knew nothing about. They assumed they'd inherited it directly. Catherine, Emma's voice cut through my thoughts as she burst into my office the next day. Why aren't you returning Mom's calls? We need you to write a speech for the auction about donating your collection. I looked up from my paperwork. I'm busy, Emma. Besides, I didn't donate anything. You took it. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. It's for charity. Everyone's talking about how generous the Mitchell family is. You should be proud. Generous with other people's possessions. I raised an eyebrow. How noble. Why are you being like this? She perched on my desk, knocking over a stack of documents. You never cared about attention before. Always hiding away with your old furniture and dusty books. I carefully straightened the papers, property documents, historical surveys, preservation agreements. You're right, Emma. I never cared about attention. I still don't. Then come to the auction. Smile for the photos. Help us show everyone what our family stands for. I met her eyes. Oh, I'll show exactly what this family stands for. The day before the auction, my parents arrived at my house unannounced. Dad looked uncomfortable, Mom determined. Catherine, you're embarrassing us, Mom declared. The charity committee keeps asking why you're not involved in the auction preparations. People are talking. Let them talk, I replied, not looking up from my laptop where I was finalizing documents with Marcus. This isn't like you, Dad added. You've always been the sensible one, the quiet one. The pushover, you mean? I finally looked at them. The one who never complained when you gave Emma my college fund, who smiled politely when you dismissed my interests as silly hobbies. That's not fair, Mom protested. We've always supported you. No, you've always tolerated me. There's a difference. What are you working on anyway? Mom tried to peek at my screen. More insurance paperwork? You're not going to make a scene at the auction, are you? I closed my laptop. Don't worry, Mom. I won't do anything to overshadow Emma's big moment. They left unsatisfied but relieved, thinking they'd averted a crisis. They had no idea what was coming. That evening, I met with Marcus one last time to sign the final papers. The Mitchell estate would be donated to the National Historic Preservation Society, transformed into a museum of Victorian architecture and design. My parents could continue living there, but under strict preservation guidelines. No modernization, no alterations, no changes without society approval. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked as I signed. It's an incredibly generous donation. I thought about my antique collection scattered across auction displays without my consent. I'm sure. Some things deserve to be preserved, protected from people who don't understand their value. The press release goes out tomorrow morning, he confirmed, right before the auction. I smiled, imagining the scene that would unfold. Perfect timing. Back home, I stood in my empty living room, looking at the bare display cases. Soon they would be filled again, not with my original collection, but with new pieces I'd spend years finding and restoring. My passion wasn't in the possessions themselves, but in the hunt, the restoration, the preservation of history. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Final chance to write that speech. Don't let the family down. I didn't respond, Tomorrow, the Mitchell family would learn exactly how it felt to have something precious taken without their consent. My parents would wake up to discover they no longer controlled their beloved estate, just as I'd woken up to find my collection gone. The difference was, my donation would actually preserve something valuable for future generations. And unlike them, I had every legal right to do what I'd done. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in years. Tomorrow would change everything, and for once, I wasn't going to be the quiet, sensible Catherine they'd always taken for granted. The morning of the auction dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a vintage Chanel suit, another piece my family had never appreciated or understood. As I drove to the auction house, my phone started buzzing incessantly. The press release had dropped. Emma called first, hysterical. "What have you done?" "Mom's having a breakdown. The estate." "How could you?" I let it go to voicemail. Then came Dad's messages, alternating between threats and pleas. Mom simply texted, "Come home immediately. We need to discuss this outrage." Instead, I walked into the auction house, where my antique collection was displayed for Emma's grand charity event. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family had taken my carefully curated pieces to preserve art and culture, while simultaneously planning to strip all historical value from our ancestral home. "Catherine," Emma spotted me, rushing over in a panic. "You have to fix this. The Preservation Society, they're saying the estate belongs to you? That you've donated it." I smiled serenely. "Actually, it's already done. The papers were signed yesterday. The Mitchell estate is now officially a protected historical site." But where will Mom and Dad live?" "They can stay, of course. The society is very reasonable. They just can't make any changes without approval. No modernization, no renovations, no destroying its historical integrity." I paused meaningfully. It's funny how important preservation suddenly becomes when it's your own treasures at stake. Emma's face flushed with anger. "This is revenge, isn't it? Because of the antiques." "No, Emma. This is protection. Something you taught me was necessary when you decided my collection needed to be preserved through your foundation." The auction room was filling up with local socialites and media. My parents arrived, looking shell-shocked and angry. Mom made a beeline for me, but was intercepted by Marcus, who just arrived with his team. "Mrs. Mitchell," he called out cheerfully, "we're so excited about cataloging the estate's original features. Catherine tells us you've maintained much of the Victorian infrastructure." I watched as my mother plastered on her social smile, trapped by appearances into playing nice with the man who now controlled her renovation dreams. Dad stood by, looking lost without his usual authority. The auction began, and I took my seat in the front row. Each of my pieces came up for bid, and I watched them sell one by one. But instead of feeling lost, I felt vindicated. The total came to just over $3 million, more than I estimated. Emma took the podium, trying to maintain her composure. "The Mitchell Foundation for Creative Arts would like to thank our generous donors, especially my sister Catherine, whose contribution made this possible." I stood up then, walking to the podium. Emma tried to stop me, but I gently moved her aside. "Thank you, Emma. I'd like to say a few words about preservation." The room fell silent. "Today we've raised over $3 million from my antique collection, a collection I spent 15 years building, researching, and restoring. Each piece had a history, a story, a value beyond its price tag." I looked directly at my family. In that spirit of preservation, I'm pleased to announce that the Mitchell estate, my grandmother's legacy, will now be protected for future generations. The National Historic Preservation Society will ensure its architectural integrity remains intact, just as